Sterilizing, buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves gun. Trees, laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slide, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves gun. Trees, laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.tv, and it is Tuesday, the 23rd of August. And for some odd reason, loading for me, but we'll wait. Maybe it'll show up. I want to thank everybody that helped do the show on Sunday for me. Lark from Texas and Chris Duck from Kingston and Jules. I want to thank everybody that chipped in on that. I understand there was some technical problems, and I guess there was a bit of trouble here and there, but it happened, you know, but I really want to thank everybody for pitching in on that. Hopefully I think there was about an hour and 10, 20 minutes of the show that went off, so better than no show at all. And so I actually got to get away from this for a day, and it's almost like I had a huge holiday because I had Sunday, Monday off, and that's pretty big holiday for me. So again, I want to thank everybody. Went down to the Mopar show in New Hamburg, Ontario, and I was quite pleased. Kathy Hamilton, who I have the utmost respect for as a researcher and a mother and a wife, met her husband at the Mopar show. He restores old vehicles, and so it was nice to meet him. I'd never met him before. Next on my hit list is meet Kathy. But we had a pretty enjoyable afternoon. We had some laughs, got some pictures, and met the people that put out the Mopar Collector's Guide, and they're from Louisiana, and of course they got flooded out, and so he'd flown. I think he was up here, and then he flew back down there or something. He had to go to Vegas for another, because they were getting ready for another show or something over there, and then back to the show in New Hamburg, Ontario. Great people, fantastic people they are. Can't say enough about them. I don't even care if you're a Mopar fan. Go get a subscription to what do I call it? Mopar Collector's Guide, and these guys do some absolutely phenomenal articles. The last one they just did was on the Americanization, I guess, the re-Americanization of Cuba, which is underway now. I didn't get to read that one. We picked up a copy, but it was last month's copy or whatever. And we thanked them for doing these articles. They've been doing these articles on global warming and EPA and all of these things for many years now. And they don't pull any punches. And so even though, he says a lot of his subscribers, who have been conned into the idea the world's going to end if we don't give everything up to the United Nations and their players and the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of his, there's a fair percentage of his subscribers who, are having a difficult time with some of their articles. But being a researcher, their articles are second to none on environment and all of the things that they're doing, wanting us to get into electric cars and that. So, but he says, we're about the last of the independents they got a very good circulation, a really large circulation. And he said, we're independent. We print what we want. And that's what we need more of. We need more people out there printing stuff and getting the word out to people. So it's good. It's all good. So, I really enjoyed it. And it was fun. And so that's what we did. And so now it's Tuesday night, back on the air. Now, I saw an interesting thing on CBC News. What this has to do on CBC News, the Communist Broadcasting Corporation of Canada. They actually put a thing in there. I don't know whose late night talk show it was. I don't have a TV and I don't watch any of those clowns. I got better things to do. And apparently, the story went something like Hillary Clinton is fit to be president because she has the capacity to open a pickle jar. So power to her. I think that's a prerequisite to becoming the President of the United States, is you must prove that you can, with witnesses, open a pickle jar. You can't just say you opened a pickle jar, you got to prove it. So I guess she proved it, but then I heard it had been already cracked. So it was basically a loose lid, so there was no real pressure there for her to open it, but then she probably demanded it, or somebody's going to not be around in the morning. Who knows? I phoned the courthouse today, and it was kind of interesting. I was looking for some documentation of. I wanted the names of all of the players in our court case back from start in 2013 and through 2014, and it's time to go after these guys. So I just called the courthouse to get a list of all the participants over all that time, all the crowns and justices and judges and everybody that was involved in it. And it was kind of humorous because eventually the lady in charge of that says, like, what do you want this stuff for? Well, think about it. Okay, you broke every freaking rule in the book, and so did all of those players break every rule in the book, so we're looking for restitution here, or restoration. And so that's when she started doing a bit of a dance. And then they started hanging up and firing me off here and there and everywhere else. And so I phoned the Attorney General's office, because the Attorney General's office isn't supposed to be in charge of all the courts. And when I talked to the Attorney General's office, what happens so many times here in Canada, and you'll find the same thing in the United States, Britain, Australia, everywhere else, because it's all set up the same way, is that it all goes with that book that was written in 1929 by Chief Justice in England, called The New Despotism. And this is despotism. Because even though the courts are supposed to be under the control of the Attorney General's office, when I phone the Attorney General's office, I'm told that, they're under the umbrella of the ministry. In other words, they're under the umbrella, but they're arm's length again. So while the courts are under the ministry of the Attorney General, the ministry really can't touch them. Same thing when I was looking for who polices the police. It turns out it's the police. So the Attorney General told me that today that, or their office told me today that, because they were getting a little squirrely on me, that she actually said this: the judges are the bosses. The judges own the court. The people don't own the court. The province doesn't own the court. The judges own the court. Now, have you ever been in court and you start to tick off a judge or something? He'll say, "This is my court," And I always thought, well, no, you're just working here, you twit. But after the conversation with the Attorney General's office today, I guess he might just be right. Because all of the courts are listed as private businesses, just as all the governments are listed as private businesses. And that MANTA, M-A-N-T-A, out of Ohio, when I first ran into them and started doing some looking around, I phoned them and asked them where they get their information. Like, where are you getting this stuff? All this stuff is listed as private businesses. And he said all their stuff comes from Dun & Bradstreet. So, your state is a private business. Your municipality is a private business. Your local courthouse is a private business. Your waterworks is a private business. And it makes sense because the federal governments and everything below it are all chartered companies. And so everything below that is also a chartered company. And they're companies. And that's why we have a legal system, not a law system. We don't have law, we have legal. And legal is corporate, legal is fiction. Legal ain't real, nor is any corporation real. They're classed as dead fictional entities. And that's who rules our life, and we got to get that stopped. So we'll just keep banging away and digging around, and more and more people are starting to come to the same conclusions because they're right conclusions, and so it won't be too long now before we start gaining control again. And one of the things I was thinking about, is this, back in, I think it was the 1200s or whenever, when the plebs or villeins or common people had enough, and they figured out what was wrong was the lawyers. And they went after the judge and the lawyers because judges are lawyers. And their deal was that they were going to physically kill them all. And they got quite a few of them. And that forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. But when the leftover lawyers came back with the few law books they had left over, they explained to the king that what he signed was null and void, and because it was signed under duress. Yet they've held the Magna Carta up to us for 800 years, telling us that this was our document of basically freedom, I guess, when in fact it was of no use to anybody, really. and this is where we end up today. But you know, I think about what Shakespeare said. First, not second, not third, not 27th, not 96th. First, kill all the lawyers. Now, I really don't know that he was talking about physically kill the lawyers, because we have to kill the entire system. We basically have to starve the system out. So when I was looking up some stuff here, and I was looking up, I just went to etymology, which is one of my favorite search tools, and I looked up kill. There's all kinds of things what it means, you know. But the verb from the 1200s is to strike, hit, beat, knock, deprive of life, put to death, and murder, execute. But the early surviving record suggests otherwise. Anyways, we have also here meaning under kill verb, to nullify or neutralize the qualities of, which is from the 1600s. And I kind of got a funny feeling that might be what Shakespeare was talking. Maybe he meant to just go snuff them out. But, you know, when you say we need to kill the lawyers, what we need to do is we need to nullify or neutralize the qualities of the lawyers. And because lawyers don't act in law. Right? They have absolutely nothing to do with law. They're the ones that turn. They're the attorneys. And they're the ones that created the fictions, the fictional entities, the corporations. And so we need to just, see, we go back to law, we don't need lawyers. We most definitely don't need lawyers. There never was lawyers. You had a judge and a jury. Then the two parties came and stood beside each other, not like on, pretty much like small claims court, except small claims court doesn't have a jury. But it was basically the same thing. You know, you each, this my side, that's your side, and then the jury would figure out who's in the right, who's in the wrong, best they could, and dealt with it from there. The judge was merely someone there to help with meanings of words or thought processes or whatever. That was his job. And he didn't have the judges, because it said, let no man judge you. The judges didn't judge you. You were judged by your peers. That's law. Now all we got is these administrative courts have got nothing whatsoever to do with law. And this is why we're in such a mess. That's why the jails and the prisons are full of hundreds of thousands of people who have never harmed anyone. And you can thank the lawyers for that, because they're the ones that write the rules and the regulations into the corporate bodies, which they pass off as law, which is really truly color of law. And the only way anybody would listen to it is through fear, which is the force of law, which are the police forces, who are armed to the teeth to bring you to where they can feed on you, because these people, they produce nothing, and they need a paycheck, and you're the paycheck. So we need to stop putting up with that ASAP. Now, I saw I was rooting around in etymology. Now, I don't know exactly where that got to. I may have lost it. Hope not. Maybe not. Maybe just give me a second, see if I can dig it out of here. I may have lost it. Maybe not. I go through so many of these things. Here it is. I was getting my. It's funny how this stuff happens. I was getting my coffee the other day, and we were talking about some stuff, and the girl behind the counter says, "Oh, I know what happened. I guess Sunday, my wife tuned into the show around 1 o'clock, and she was kind of laughing about it. She says, I just tuned in to listen around 1, and the first thing I heard was, you know what Ron's problem is? And he doesn't like isms." So I got kind of a giggle out of that. But then when I was getting my coffee, we were talking, and I mentioned isms, and the girl became, she said like externalisms. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? So I went home and looked it up and that. And state of being external, that which is external. And externalize comes from 1846. And it says self-government begins with the reverential recognition of a supreme law. Its process is a constant endeavor to render that law objective, real, operative, to externalize it, if we may use the term. And that brought me to some other stuff, which brought me to some other stuff. And I ended up at a, if I can find it, oh, I know where I can find it. I sent it out to somebody today. Let me just go and dig that out, the link to it. This one right here. And while this is from Creation, what's it called? Creation.com. Now, there's some stuff in here I'm not too impressed with, but overall, it's pretty good. I do not ever use the word, or I try never to use the word human or humanity or that, because simply, and I find this difficult because this is creation.com, and they talk about the Bible and the King James Bible. The word human and the word legal do not exist in that book. And yet in this article, they use the word, which kind of ticks me off a little bit. But this kind of goes with the American Constitution. It kind of goes with the Canadian Charter and Bill of Rights. And up here, the preamble states very specifically that it is based upon the principles and supremacy of God and the rule of law. And that's the big difference. We're stuck in this rule of law, which is an ambiguous statement. And we deal with legalese, which is a jargon, and jargon is used to deceive and gain advantage. Well, that doesn't sound like a law for the people, by the people. That sounds like some kind of policy made up, used to steal from us to feed people who don't do anything. You know, if people ever, look down their noses at people on welfare who maybe lost their job or something, having a hard time, well, there's no bigger welfare recipients than those in the courts and the corporations themselves. Somebody can't feed their family, but a corporation gets a donation, your donation, through the so-called government, which is another corporation. So they say, we've got this great new thing we're going to do, but it needs funding. Well, it was so great that the public would, the private sector would fund it. But we don't have time to wait. We're going to invest, 60 million, 2 billion, whatever. And more times than not, these wonderful schemes go broke, and the guys that set it up walk away extremely wealthy, and you're left holding the bill. Meanwhile, the one that is having a hard time getting enough money together to get a cup of soup is left by the wayside. And that's the difference between legal and law again. That wouldn't happen in law. Anyways, according to this is just an abstract here. It says the Christian foundations of the rule of law in the West, a legacy of liberty and resistance against tyranny. And this is not a bad piece. I don't know exactly when it was written, but it's not a bad piece. According to the tradition of the rule of law in the West, to be under law presupposes presupposes the existence of certain laws serving as an effective check on arbitrary power. The rule of law is therefore far more than a mere existence of positive laws. It also requires the state to act in accordance with the principles of a higher law, and that is what the Constitution states. The search for such higher law implies, however, a moral discussion on what laws ought to be. If so, the rule of law becomes an impracticable and even undesirable achievement for societies not subject to certain patterns of culture and religious behavior. On the other hand, any radical change in such patterns can certainly produce undesirable consequences for the realization of the rule of law. Now, first of all, again, legal is amoral. Okay, it is amoral. It is fictional. And a fiction can't have moral. It's corporate. Corporate is a dead entity, and it's impossible for have morals. And that's why we see what's going on in our governments now, because they're running with the legal system, which is amoral. Anyways, the Bible has been historically recognized as the most important book for the development of both the rule of law and democratic institutions of the Western world. However, we have seen over these last decades a deep erosion of individual rights with the growth of state power over the life and liberty of individuals. In the future we want for ourselves and our future generations is one of freedom under law, not absolute subjection to the arbitrary will of human authorities. We will have to restore the biblical foundations of the rule of law in the Western world. As such, the rule of law talks about the protection of the individual by God-given liberties rather than by an all-powerful law-giving government endowed by God-like powers over the civil society. And we have the next headline here, Christianity and the Discovery of the Individual. The modern roots of our individual rights and freedoms in the Western world are found in Christianity. The recognition by law of the intrinsic value of each human being did not exist in ancient times. Anytime you hear me, I'm just going to read this. Anytime you hear me say human, just please interject with man, woman. Among the Romans, law protected social institutions such as the patriarchal family, but it did not safeguard the basic rights of the individuals, such as freedom, security, freedom of conscience, speech, assembly, association, and so forth. For them, the individual was of value only if he was a part of the political fabric and able to contribute to its uses as though it were the end of his being to aggrandize the state. And it's the same thing today. I mean, exactly what was said there is the same thing as today. According to Benjamin Constant, a great French political philosopher, it is wrong to believe that people enjoyed individual rights prior to Christianity. In fact, as Fustel de Coulanges put it, the ancients had not even the idea of what it means. In 390, Bishop Ambrose, who was located in Milan, forced Emperor Theodosius to repent of his vindictive massacre of 7,000 people. The fact indicates that under the influence of Christianity, nobody, not even the Roman emperor, could be above the law. And in the 13th century, normalists were the first to elaborate legal theories of God-given rights as individual rights derived from a natural order sustained by God's immutable laws. And that's a mistake here. Legal theories, okay? Legal is not freaking law, okay? So if they're elaborating on legal theories of God-given rights, that's not correct. Anyways, as individual rights derived from a natural order sustained by God's immutable laws of right reason, for many evil thinkers, not even the king himself could violate certain rights of the subject because the idea of law was attached to the Bible-based concept of Christian justice. The notion that law and liberty are inseparable is another legacy of Christianity. Accordingly, God's revealed will is regarded as the higher law and therefore placed above man law. Then liberty is found under the law, God's law, because as the Bible says, the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul, if so, people have the moral duty to disobey a man law that perverts God's law for the purpose of civil government is to establish all societies in a godly order of freedom and justice. St. Augustine of Hippo once wrote that an unjust law is a contradiction in terms. For him, man laws could be out of harmony with God's higher laws, and rulers who enact unjust laws were wicked and unlawful authorities. In the City of God, St. Augustine explains that a civil authority that has no regard for justice cannot be distinguished from a band of robbers. Take your traffic cops. That's what they are. They're a legalized corporate band of highwaymen. Justice being taken away, then what are kingdoms but great robberies? For what are robberies themselves but little kingdoms? And the taxes that we pay and all that. So they write all these rules, regulations, policies, statutes, always in order to fleece you and take your money and put it in their pocket. Anyways, in the same way, St. Thomas Aquinas considered an unjust law a crooked law, which is kind of cool. Because if you look up crooked, which I'm not going to do, I don't exactly remember the definition, but you can look up crooked in etymology, and it's quite interesting. And it goes with bent and all of this kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny because every time I think about crooked law and I see the Pope with his crooked stick, the crooked cross, the bent cross, it's the same thing. It's deception, it's deceit. It always kills me when I see that staff that the Pope walks around with the crooked or the bent cross on it, the same thing as crooked. Anyways, and as such, nobody would have to obey it. For St. Aquinas, since God's justice was the basic foundation for the rule of law system, a law that prescribed murder or perjury was not really law, for people would have the moral right to disobey unjust commands, which we do have the right. One of the reasons they took the juries away from us is because the jury is where law is found, and the juries have the right to strike down any so-called law that they see to be unjust. That's why you don't see many juries around anymore. And we'll continue. Rulers who enact unjust law cease to be authorities in the rightful sense, becoming mere tyrants. The word tyranny comes from the Greek. Now, see, we have, this is very interesting. The word tyranny comes from the Greek for, quote, secular rule. Okay? Secular rule, which means rule by men instead of rule by law or rule of law. In declaring the equality of all men's souls in the sight of God, Christianity compelled the kings of England to recognize the supremacy of the divine law over their arbitrary will. The absolutist monarch inherited from Roman law was thereby counteracted and transformed into a monarch explicitly under law. The Christian religion worked there as a civilizing force and a stranger to despotism. As one may say, the Bible's message elevated the blood-drinking barbarians of the British Isles to decency. Now, again, as far as despotism goes, that's where we are again. We're back into tyrannical despotism. And, I've put the link in before, but the book is called The New Despotism. You can just Google the thing, look it up, and it was written in 1929 as a warning to us. And here we are in 2016. At the time of the Magna Carta, 2012, a royal judge called Henry de Bracton wrote a massive treatise on principles of law and justice. Bracton is broadly regarded as the father of the common law because his book, of which I can't say, is in French or something, is one of the most important works on the constitution of medieval England. For Bracton, the application of the law implies a just sanction ordering virtue and prohibiting its opposite, which means that the state law can never depart from God's higher laws. As Bracton explains, jurisprudence was the science of the just and the unjust. And he also declared that the state is under God and the law, because the law makes the king. For there is no king where will rules rather than the law. And they had the divine right of kings. Okay, basically the king only had the authority to rule as long as he stayed within God's law. The minute that he went and turned away from God's law, and that's where the lawyers came in again, deception and gain advantage. At that point, the king is now in the realm of tyranny. The Christian faith provided to the people of England a status liberis, state of liberty, which rested on the Christian presumption that God's law always works for the good of society. With their conversion to Christianity, the kings of England would no longer possess an arbitrary power over the life and property of individuals, changing the basic laws of the kingdom at pleasure. Rather, they were told about God's promise in the book Isaiah to deal with civil authorities who enact unjust laws. Isaiah 10:1. In fact, the Bible contains many passages condemning the perversion of justice by them. There's a whole list of stuff there. Explaining why the citizens of England have much more freedom than their French counterparts, Charles Spurgeon, 1834 to 1892, declared, there is not land beneath the sun where there is an open Bible and a preached gospel where a tyrant long can hold his place. Let the Bible be open to be read by all men, and no tyrant can long rule in peace. England owes her freedom to the Bible, and France will never possess liberty lasting and well established till she comes to reverence the gospel, which too long has rejected. The religion of Jesus makes men think, and to make men think is always dangerous to a despot's power. Now we come to reasons for civil government. The first reference to civil government in the Holy Scriptures is found in chapter 9 of the book Genesis. In this chapter, God commands capital punishment for those who take the life of other men, who are always created in the image of God. In this sense, the right to execute murders does not belong to the government officials themselves, but to God, who is the author of life and commands the death penalty for murder in several passages of the Scriptures. Thus, life can only be taken away from the individual if civil authorities apply it under God's law and commission, as the sanctity of man's life is the basis on which God sanctions capital punishment. As John Scott explains, capital punishment, according to the Bible, far from cheapening man's life by requiring the murderer's death, demonstrates a unique value by demanding an exact equivalent to the death of the victim. The state is a necessary evil that has to be subject to God's higher laws. After sin entered the world, it became necessary to establish a civil government in order to curb violence. However, the state was not envisioned in God's original plan for mankind, as it places some people in a position of authority over others. At the beginning of the creation, however, Genesis tells us that man and woman lived in close fellowship with God under his direct and sole authority. Then Thomas Paine, 1737 to 1809, a non-Christian himself, expressed a biblical worldview when he uttered these words: government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer or are exposed to the same miseries by a government which we might expect in a country without government, our calamities are heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Government, like dress, is the badge of lost innocence, and the palaces of kings are built on the ruins of the bowers of paradise. The understanding of civil government as a result of our sinful condition justifies the doctrine and limitation of the state powers. It inspired in both Britain and America the establishment of constitutional order based on checks and balances between the branches of government, namely legislative, executive, and judicial. Such division obeys the biblical revelation of God as our supreme judge, lawgiver, and king. Since all human beings are born in a sinful nature, the functions of the state ought to be legally checked, because no man can be trusted with too much power. Because God instilled in each of us a desire for freedom, political tyranny, as Lord Fortescue explained, as the attempt on the part of civil authorities to replace natural freedom by condition of servitude that only satisfies the vicious purposes of wicked rulers. As he put it, the law of England provided freedom to the people only because it was fully indebted to the Holy Scriptures. Thus, he quoted from Mark 2:27 to proclaim that the kings are called to govern for the sake of the kingdom, not the opposite. In this sense, he also remarked, a law is necessarily adjudged cruel if it increases servitude and diminishes freedom, for which human nature always craves. For servitude was introduced by man for vicious purposes, but freedom was instilled into man's nature by God. Hence, freedom taken away from men always desires to return, as it is always the case when natural liberty is denied. So he who does not favor liberty is to be deemed impious and cruel. And let's see here. This is good stuff. I gotta pick up the pace. I'm not gonna get this done, but I will put it in the chat. How the idea of evolution undermines the rule of law. The notion that human law is always subject to God's higher law started to be more deeply challenged in the 19th century after the work of Charles Darwin. Belief in evolution presupposed the non-existence of God's natural moral order as a primary source of positive law. Thus, legal positives decided to regard the positive law of the state as a mere result of sheer force and social struggle. In brief, a product of man's will. But if the laws are caught up in the faith of evolution, laws can no longer be regarded as possessing a transcendental dignity. Then the very idea of government under law loses its philosophical foundations, and as a result, societies start to lack a moral condition of lawful culture that allows them to effectively restrain the emergence of an all-powerful state. As J.R. Rushdoony pointed out, when man is made controller of his own evolution by means of the state is made into the new absolute. Hegel, in accepting social evolution, made the state the new god of being. The followers of Hegel in absolutizing the state are Marxists, Fabians, and other socialists. In brief, God and his transcendental law are dropped in favor of a new god. That new god is the state. Evolution thus leads not only to revolution, but also to totalitarianism. Social evolution theory, as it came in focus in Hegel, has made the state the new god of being. Biological evolution thinking, as it has developed since Darwin, has made revolution the greatest instrument of this new god and means to establish of this new god, the scientific socialist state. Now, I read a book some time ago, or part of it, and it was from mid-19th century, and it described that they killed God. They had to kill God because they couldn't move this new program forward if God existed. And that scientists, and it says here, the new God, the scientific social state, and that scientists would be the new priests And that's why you're not allowed to deny global warming and this and that and the other thing. Just like you couldn't deny the priests of old, you cannot deny the science today, which are the new priests. The scientists are the new priests. Behind every legal order, there's always a God. Now that's not correct. Depends, right? If it's a lawful order, it's from God. If it's a legal order, it's from man, which the state. So the legal order comes from the state, but law always comes from the higher power. The state becomes a God in itself if there is no ultimate appeal to higher laws and authority. Whenever the law of the state is regarded as the only source of legality, civil rulers become all-powerful authorities over the life and liberties of the individual. There's no lawful protection, but this says they got these guys that wrote this got their legal and their law mixed up. But other than that, it's pretty good. For no legal protection can be reasonably afforded against tyranny, and it should say lawful protection, not legal protection, because legal is tyranny. If the supremacy of God's higher law is not made to prevail in this way, Douglas W. Kmick, a law professor at the University of Notre Dame, has correctly remarked, views and opinions antagonistic to God's plan, whether fashioned in legislative enactment or spontaneously over an extended period of time in judicial degree, are hardly immutable first principles, and they have led to and continue to lead to the defeat of our happiness. And you're seeing a lot less happy people out there, that's for damn sure, because we're being ground into the ground. They're putting the chains around us tighter and tighter and tighter. And we have to throw off the chains that bind us, and the chains that bind us are the legal chains. And there is no moral value in those chains, and we got to get rid of them. Let me just move down here. Let me see. We're going to run out of time here, so let me see what we can get here. I really do recommend everybody read this. There's some really good stuff in here if you can not get screwed up with where they're using legal when they should lose law and stuff like that. Pay attention, and anytime you see human, put in man or woman, and you'll be getting a lot closer to what you need to know. God's law is above the state law. We'll go there. We only got a little bit of time. We should be able to get through this because this is where it's important. The human intellect should not be our basic reference in terms of legality because everyone is affected by sinful nature. Then our basic legal rights, it should say lawful rights, should be considered the ones revealed by God himself. God, legal is law of the corporation, law of the person, and God has no respect for the corporation or the person. So whoever wrote this is someone that has obviously gone through the school system and probably hung out in the church and got this screwed up a little bit. According to the doctrine of natura delicta, which means that our man nature, it says human here, but man nature, has been damaged by the original sin law, is not so much to be based on human wisdom as on God's wisdom and sovereign will. As the Bible says, the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the wickedness of God, or the weakness of God, is stronger than the man's strength. The rule of law can only subsist if civil authorities are able to respect the hierarchical prevalence of God's higher laws over the state law. Although the law of God is always perfect, for God's wisdom is always perfect, human authorities are sinful creatures who might have their minds controlled by his desires of the flesh. They may be slaves of sin and rebels against God, although citizens who elect sinful people and obey their wicked rulings are slaves of sin as well. Makes perfect sense. A basic question of the rule of law is to know which sort of authority we want as the ultimate source of power over ourselves, the authority of a loving God or the authority of a sinful human ruler. If we decide for the sinful ruler, then as R.J. Rushdoony puts it, we have no right to complain against the rise of totalitarianism, the rise of tyranny, because we've asked for it. And he's absolutely correct. To avoid tyranny, William Blackstone, 1723 to 1780, once declared that no human law could be valid if it contradicted God's higher laws, which maintain and regulate natural human rights to life, liberty, and property, according to Blackstone's biblical understanding of the rule of law. No human law should be suffered to contradict God's law. Nay, if any human law should allow or enjoin us to commit it, we are bound to transgress that human law, or else we must offend both the natural and the divine. The biblical understanding of lawful resistance against tyranny, when God delegates his supreme authority to men rulers, they have no liberty to use it in order to justify tyranny. In fact, there are quite remarkable examples in the Holy Scriptures where God explicitly commands civil disobedience against the state. For example, Egyptian midwives refused to obey the Pharaoh's order to kill Hebrew babies. As the Bible says, they feared God, and they did not do what the king of Egypt told them to do. Likewise, the 3 Hebrews did not obey Babylon king, whatever his name was, when he commanded everyone to bow down and worship his golden image. Daniel also refused to obey a decree enacted by King Darius, which forced everyone not to pray to any god or man except himself. In the New Testament, we have the example of the first apostles. I'm not going to worry about that right now. If the state commands what God forbids, or forbids what God commands, then our plain Christian duty is to resist, not to submit, not to submit, but to disobey the state in order to obey God. Whenever laws are enacted which contradict God's laws, civil disobedience becomes a Christian's duty. Well, the first apostles regarded it as totally lawful to disobey ungodly legislation. Today's followers of Christ like to quote from chapter 13 of Paul's letter to the Romans in order to justify their compliance with immoral, it should be amoral rules of positive law. However, Paul argues here that we obey the civil authority because it holds no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. If the person who holds the state power abuses his or her God-given power, our duty is to not submit, but to resist. According to F.A. Schaeffer, a more accurate interpretation of this passage would clearly indicate that the state is to be an agent of justice, to restrain evil from punishing the wrongdoer, and to protect the good in society. When it does the reverse, it has not proper authority. It is then a usurped authority, and as such, it becomes lawless and is tyranny. And it's true. The legal system is outside the law. We are being governed by the lawless. We have submitted to those who intend to do us harm. And that's just plain stupid. You know, even the founding fathers of the United States, I don't really like that word either, of America, said you're going to have to stand up, folks. You're going to have to stand up. And, you know, the Christian population has been so screwed over and become so submissive. I mean, when you have the Christian churches bringing in the enemy, Islam, when you have the Christian churches applauding pride parades, well, we got us a problem. Now, I don't care what you think. I don't like religion, okay? Because religion is another source of divide and conquer. It's no different than politics, okay? But you're left with a choice. And that is evolution or creation. That's your choice. Creation gives you the law of God that gives you your freedom and your liberty, where when you submit to evolution thought, okay, you have entered the secular world, which is the rule of law created by man to give advantage to certain men over other men, and that's tyranny. So it really doesn't matter. Those are your two choices. Those are your two choices. If you like tyranny, fine, good for you. I don't. Okay? I do not like to be told what to do. I do not like some pencil neck bothering me all the time. I do not like to be used as a financial instrument for someone else's gain. And that's what evolution gives you. It's exactly what it gives you. Let's see here. This is actually longer than I thought. And I'm going to run out of time here. And one of the most dangerous things. I'm not going to finish this. I'm just going to put it in the chat and people can read it, or you can go. What is this called? Creation.com if you're just listening and not in the chat. So it's creation.com / the Christian Foundations of the Rule of Law in the West. That should get you there. And again, there's certain reservations in this particular article, but they're common mistakes that are made, confusing legal and law, and forever injecting the words humanity and human. They don't exist. I mean, they quote here from the King James Bible, and then they use words that don't even exist in it. So I may send them a note and ask them to correct that, because overall, this is a pretty good article. And it says what we know in our hearts, okay? We were born into servitude in the legal system, in the amoral system. We're not to be in servitude. We're to have liberty and freedom. The law is too simple. There's no money in the law, okay? The lawyers will die if we go back to law. There's no money in it. There's no need for lawyers. You screw up, if you cause harm, you go to a court. It says, let no man judge you. That's a single man. Your peers judge you. So there's no need for lawyers. You go in, you state your case. The judge is there to help, and that's it. Makes no decision, no opinions. He is there to qualify things, to explain things, and the jury makes a decision. There's no money in it because it's not deceitful. It's not fraudulent. And so when I say kill the lawyers, in order to kill the lawyers, we must nullify them. In order to nullify them, we must move back to law. They will kick and scream all the way because it's like go to jail and don't pass go. They ain't getting a paycheck anymore. They'll actually have to go get a job somewhere, and that's what that is. So I'm going to stick this in. We're out of time, but look at it. I'm going to stick this in, and I want you to think about it and understand how important it is that we get back off. Again, I want to thank everybody that helped. Have a great night, everybody. What? That is help. That